But the teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
What a strange person.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
So when maybe you or somebody else creates an AGI system and you get to ask her one question, what would that question be?
What's outside the simulation?
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting live from Daytona Beach, Florida, this is Lighting the Void, and I'm your host, Joe Rupe, and we're live on Fringe.fm, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, as we head deeper into the late night here on this Thursday, June the 23rd on into the 24th. It's midnight here on the East Coast, 9 p.m. Pacific on the West Coast. I hope you're having fun, because we're about to take a break from the daunting and scary ass book we've been reading, Psychic Self-Defense. And tonight, we're going to have Juan Ayala back from the One-on-One podcast and Thomas Gorence from Paranoid American. I'm going to talk about, we're going to get into some conspiracy talk, maybe some Saturnian stuff, and talk about their new comic book that's coming out that you should definitely, already you should go to Paranoid American and grab the comic books. You should definitely check out Juan's podcast if you love entertainment. He's one of the best in the field, in my opinion. And they got a new comic book coming out, and they ran a Kickstarter for it, went above their goal because everybody wants to see this thing, and so do I. And it is, it's pretty rad if you go to the Kickstarter page. The Chosen One versus the Saturnian Cube. And I mean, this is what I'm talking about, man. So we should, we're going to get right into this. Okay. So tonight, the call-in number is the same as always, 1-800-588-0335. You can join the Discord if you want to as well. You can contact the show via email at contact@lightingthevoid. And somebody hit me up the other day and said I should do a text messaging thing with Signal. I have no idea what that is, but maybe we can get into that. Juan, Thomas, what's up, man? Thank you guys for coming on. Thanks for coming back to the late night.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for having us, man. Thank you so much.
What's this Signal thing that they're talking about? Do you guys know what they're talking about?
I've been using Signal forever, although I don't know it as like a tool outside of it. Just encrypts your
that one disappears,
text
right?
Messages. Yeah, it's got disappearing text, disappearing photos, but the main thing is that it's supposed to be encrypted on both people. So if I send you a text with Joe and we both have Signal encrypted, like only me and you and the CIA has the key for that particular message. So it makes it a lot harder for anyone else. Even if they could intercept the data between us, they wouldn't be able to have the key that both me and you share between every single Signal message. It's a nice extra layer of protection that doesn't already exist if you just use the built-in iOS or Android messaging apps. So again, it's just you and the person you're talking to, and the CIA and the NSA and Amazon and everyone else.
Just start a Telegram, Joe. Just
I have a
hip.
Telegram. I just have it for the members though. But maybe.
Oh, make one for the show, bro.
Yeah, I should. Yeah. Yeah. The Telegram isn't it funny how Telegram, they've tried to hack Telegram. I think Apple tried to hack their stuff, not hack it, but get their code or something like that. I think Facebook did or something like that. And they kept their stuff encrypted. I think Telegram's still pretty safe, I would think, so.
Don't trust anyone, Joe.
Yeah.
Well, they're all lizards. They're all cut from the same cloth.
I don't care. I mean, what are they going to do? Right. Like, what are they going to do? I mean, I do care about my privacy. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not like scared about it, So
I'm not a fan of any particular platform or technology or whatever, but man, out of like trying to run your own thing, Discord still seems like a really nice option because you got channels and voice channels and organization, and you can assign moderators and stuff, and none of that exists in any other platform that I'm aware of to the same extent. Definitely not Telegram.
Yeah, no. Telegram is nice because I guess a lot of people have caught on to it, but it can get a little bit overwhelming with all the people just talking on one channel. I do like that about Discord, but
it's like Facebook a little bit. Like nobody, at least no one I know, like wants to use Facebook, but everyone's on Facebook. So like you have to go to where the people are at, and it's sort of the same thing with everyone. Telegram, Signal, Discord, Ko-fi, and Snapchat, and TikTok, and every single one you can think of.
OnlyFans, you should start.
Like, I don't. Yeah.
What would I do? I mean, I'm not into the porn. I mean, does it have to be porn to do that?
No, absolutely not. I mean, you can just be wanting to support and put someone through school for just the goodness of your heart, and if they want to dance,
okay, Manly P Hall,
more power to them.
Manly P Hall had 2 sugar mamas, bro, not one. Yeah.
Did y'all ever find out the truth about that? Did Manly P Hall really have sugar mamas? Like,
yeah, two sugar mamas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I mean, find out the truth. I mean, we didn't go and investigate and talk to anybody. It was just written.
Although,
but
if I might add, I have until now a interview secured with somebody who studied with him for 7 years.
Cool.
Okay, so he knew him personally. So we'll see if that goes through. If it doesn't, and I might just ask him, like, yo, is it true that he had 2 oil heiresses that were his sugar mamas? Apparently one was a lesbian and wanted to marry him, but he wasn't into her. So I don't know.
Well, wasn't it a mother and a daughter?
A mother and a daughter.
I would believe that.
Yeah,
for sure.
It was a mother and a daughter that were like big time into occultism, and he was big time into occultism, and they're like, hey, we got this money, and he's like, hey, I got this knowledge, and they were like, hey, 2 and 2 equals 4, let's do this.
I got the money, you got the honey, let's do it. Right?
But imagine, Joe, how nice that would be. Like if you just like had this listener that really likes your show. She's super rich. She just hits you up and goes, hey,
me and my daughter,
you.
Me and my daughter really support you.
We're going to support.
I mean, to be honest with you, most of my supporters are that way. To be honest with you, I mean, like, but they're not sugar mamas by any means.
Well, this answered a deep question I had for so long, and it's a question I have for every occultist before 1970, and that's how rich were you that you were able to ignore the pains of everyday life and just focus on occult research? Like, you have to be rich already to even have the luxury of like finding these books and ignoring just like not dying of dysentery or whatever. I say that somewhat jokingly, but that's true. And we found that about the sugar mama and the sugar daughter. It was like, finally something makes sense. Here's how Manly P. Hall was able to just like kick back and read books all day.
Made sense to me. Like some of his best stuff was in his 20s and like his or late 20s or whatever, right? And I'm thinking,
you're supposed to be at work right now.
Like how is he doing this? Like I lived in a shack when I did my radio show, right? Until I got enough support I could start doing things, but it's by no means. And another thing too, like to preach as much as he preaches about like ethics, Masonic ethics and spiritual code and things like that, to find out that he was bought, it's like, come on,
Joe,
man.
Don't hate the player, hate the game, bro.
No, I'm not hating him. If you've read his books though, that he talks about selling the money and selling your stuff for material gain and this stuff. He talks about it all the time. So
well,
that would be crazy to me.
I don't want to burst anybody's bubble about Manly Hall because I'm a very big Manly Hall fan. I've learned a lot of stuff from him, but he wasn't exactly what you're saying where like it's like practice what you preach. He was eating junk food and he had, he was close to he's diabetic and all this stuff. He was doing stuff that was against what he was preaching about because he would preach about all this stuff. And towards the end of his life, he was looking for the extension of his life, something. So he was looking for the metaphysical, and that's how he got scammed and allegedly murdered. So that there's a whole thing. There's a whole conspiracy there, but he wasn't what he actually was putting out as far as like all this mysticism and how you're saying spirituality and look within and all this. So he was eating Twinkies probably and zebra cakes at his house. Dude.
Zebra cakes. Oh, dude.
See, I think everyone's allowed to be. I think you're allowed to be a hypocrite as a human.
Yeah, and honestly, for sure. I mean, I eat Little Debbie's all the time, dude. Yeah.
Well, and I think a good point to make here is that like all three of us could say like, oh yeah, it would be great to run 2 miles every day, and like the three of us know that, unequivocally, yeah, it'd be great. Like, did you run 2 miles today, Joe? I didn't run 2 miles today.
I walked a good amount of ways, but that's only because I don't want to drive my car.
But you could still tell everyone hey, it would be great if you ran 2 miles a day while you yourself don't do it. Yeah. And it's still true. I don't know if that makes you a hypocrite, but it's kind of along those same lines. Like, it's tell you those how to do the right thing.
That can't teach, right? That's what it is.
I can't argue with that, man.
So that's why I teach radio hosts, because I'm not that good at it, right? But I know all the stuff about it. I know a lot about it. One-on-one.
And just like a teacher, you watch your students go off and like start making 4 and 5 times what you make within like a year, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, look, like even in jiu-jitsu, there's a couple of instructors that have never been in the ring, never fought or whatever. There's a few camps that have like grown some badass fighters, man, like champions, and they're not anywhere close to being a fighter or anything like that. They just study the hell out of it,
Or hell, boxing coaches is a great idea. Hell, I mean, outside of the creepy connotations of recent news, but like a gymnastics teacher is typically like an old dude.
Everybody knows the gymnastics teacher, right?
But I mean, he's not doing backflips. He's not doing none of those gymnastics moves.
Where'd they touch you, Thomas? Show me where they touched you on the doll.
Oh, no.
Are we going to get into the McMartin preschool trial memory repression here?
Did both you guys grow up in Florida?
I was born in Puerto Rico until I was like 6 or 7. Then I came to Florida. Yeah.
Cool.
And I moved to Florida around the same time. And I would argue I'm even more Floridian than native Floridians because I came from New York, which is like the ultimate Florida move.
Sure. Yeah. Everybody.
So, yeah. And I moved from upstate New York to Florida around same thing, 7 or 8.
I moved from upstate to Florida at 38, 39 years old.
We're all 3 Florida men. I just realized that. Yeah. We have the Holy Trinity here of Florida men.
The Holy Trinity.
What, to summon a homunculus right now?
I call Holy Spirit, so you guys get to fight over father and son.
Well, there is a place, man. I want you guys to go with me if we ever get time. And it's right outside of Daytona Beach. And it's like, it sounds stupid, but it's some like fairy forest thing, right? Where they're supposed to have like magical elemental creatures. I don't want to go there for that. I want to go there because they have a chair there that they claim is the devil's chair, man.
Yeah. Is that in Casadega?
I haven't been there. Have you been there?
We drove past. Didn't we drive past it on Saturday, Thomas?
Yeah.
Me and Thomas were in Jacksonville.
So you guys were in my neck of the woods. You didn't come by and say what's up or nothing? You didn't come out to the beach?
You got to book us through our agents, bro. What do you?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We were hanging with Tripley, dog. We, you know what I mean? We were doing it big with the big dogs. So
weren't they in Jacksonville? I thought they were in Jacksonville.
We were up there.
Yeah. I got invited, but I couldn't go. I wanted to though. I wanted to see what's his name? Not Tripoli. I love Sam. Don't get me wrong, but the redneck dude from Louisiana. I wanted to see him. Wasn't he there?
Redneck dude from Louisiana. Who?
He wasn't there?
No.
Well, then I'm glad I didn't go. Theo Vaughn. I thought Theo Vaughn was going to be there.
No. It was Eddie Bravo and Sam Tripoli. It was a small thing. It was cool. We enjoyed it. There was a lot of people there, and we just drove up there, drove back. I stopped at the first time at Buc-ee's for the first time ever.
Talking about sliders, man.
Buc-ee's sliders?
Yeah,
Well, the next time
those-
you go
those
through,
brisket
man, you
sliders.
guys should come to Daytona. We'll go sit in the devil's chair out there. No,
Well, we'll go
or-
see elementals with you, bro. We'll
Yeah.
get together and go see elementals.
I'm not so interested in the fairy forest. I know a lot of people are into that stuff, but I want to. I have a fascination with the devil for some reason. Like I want to see if he's real. And so far, the only thing that I've found that is like this. Have you ever seen that movie? It, like it's
Yeah,
just
of
the
course.
one that just came out on Netflix. It's kind of freaky, but the it thing kind of plays on your fear. So I did like this chaos magic ritual to invoke the devil once, not to trade, or to get anything from it. I just
You're
wanted
talking
to-
my language here, man. I'm all. I've been begging Juan to summon a demon with me for months,
really.
and he's afraid to. And I'm all. I want to. Like I want to record it and get rich, right? Like if me and you can actually record a demon being summoned on video, no one else has done that before. So like, let's be the ones.
Yeah, the only person I ever talked to that had me convinced that they actually summoned something into physical form was Stephen Skinner, right? He's got a ton of books out on magic, right? And Gordon White talks about him all the time, but I had him on the show a long time ago when I used to have like guests every night, right? And this guy was one of the most well-known ceremonial magicians on the planet. And I asked him, I said, why do you invoke demons? And he didn't like hesitate at all. He was like, because I get what I want. That's it. Right. And I'm like, that's it. You don't do it. He said, I don't do it for spiritual purposes or whatever. Like I do it to get what I want to get in life, I
don't think he's read Secret Teachings of All Ages.
No, well, I'm sure he has, right? But he
Daddy
has a
Hall
whole,
says not to do that.
he has a whole different like outlook on this thing, right? But also he talked about how he summoned a demon when I think he was 16 in physical form, and he saw its eyes and everything. Anyways, when I did this invocation, it's just a crossroads ritual. You've all heard about it, right? Everybody's heard about it. But Gordon White has a pretty good one in his book called Chaos Magic Protocols, right? Or Chaos Protocols. When I did this invocation, you're supposed to say all of the names, and then you find a crossroads thing, and you go out there, and you keep going out there by yourself. And in that book, he says that you'll know when he shows up. You'll just know, right? You won't be questioning it or anything. Third day, I knew exactly what he was talking about. It's like that movie, It. You just get filled with a massive amount of fear, right? Like the kind you did when you were a little kid, but almost more. And that's the only reality, bro, that I've ever, out of doing all this ceremonial stuff, as far as the dark side goes, that's the darkest anything has ever gotten for me. And
Are you just describing an emotional reaction?
yeah, I mean,
that
that's
you
basically what it
manifested?
was. It wasn't even, I wasn't even thinking about it. It just, have you ever had a panic attack before? Like a real,
Yeah, I think so. But
well, then you hadn't had one,
diagnosed
not
them.
like I have, if you think so.
Okay.
Right. But it's like that. It just comes up in you and you don't know where it came from. You weren't thinking about it. You just started freaking out, right? That kind of emotion that came up in me, and other than that though, I was like, okay, well, I've dealt with this. I dealt with this when I was a little kid. If this is all you got, I'm not impressed, because I was hoping to see something crazy and scary and life-changing, and that way I would believe more in the metaphysical realm. Period. It wasn't about bringing evil or good or the devil or God. It was just, I want to see on the other side kind of thing, Angels don't seem to do that for me. They seem to make my life really hard, so I learn lessons. They don't really
If
show
John
that,
D,
man.
if John D wasn't able to do it, I don't think anyone really can. I mean, I
Exactly.
think it's all mental, bro. Like, you think about Mephistopheles and like that painting of Eliphas. I think it's Eliphas Levi that painted the magician summoning Mephistopheles that looks like a little Yoda. Like when you think about that, even the Faustian myth, when you think about that, like that's what Harry Potter is all about. Like it's, an actual wand and all this stuff. I don't think it's like that. I think it's more mental, and how you said more elemental than anything. And it's more metaphysical, not the actual physical stuff. That's why it's all about scrying and sitting there and looking like I can see. The angels are asking, they want us to swap wives.
Yeah, for $333 and I get your wife. right?
Yeah, exactly. So just think about that. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I think it's how the Hermetic principle, all is mind. I think that's what it's really about. And more of like how you're saying, that energy of feeling like, oh, something's watching me, something's in the corner there. And that's a primal, what H.P. Lovecraft says, the oldest and strongest kind of emotion is fear, and fear of the unknown. So that's through all the generations of all your ancestors feeling fear. That's what you felt, because it's something that you don't know about. You know what I mean? Like,
it's already pretty scary to go out in the woods by yourself, find a crossroads, and it can be any crossroads. Wait till like 3:30 in the morning, go out there, and then start invoking all the names that Satan's been given, not just one, all of them, right? And say them in the dark by yourself. So, in a sense, you're already like kicking up things in your unconscious that are there to freak you out, I think, you know.
And not just that, but it's not like anyone in this world lives in a vacuum. So like, even if you wear all kinds of fancy cloaks and you've got old grimoires and stuff, like, you've seen the Freddy Krueger series, and you've seen The Ring, and you've seen horror movies.
Yeah, dude.
So like, when you go and do these, magic rituals, and you're out in the middle of the woods and in the dark, like, you can't not think about Jason being in those woods with you,
right.
you know?
But then again, bro, like the things that have happened to me as far as like out of body stuff, the astral realm, or the stuff I saw when I was a kid. I mean, unless I'm, I guess, what do you call it? Not sociopathic, schizophrenic, right? Unless I'm schizophrenic, then, that stuff did happen to me, But as far as like trying to see it in the physical world, I think, I'm not saying it's not real. I'm not saying you can't do it. There's plenty of books and magicians out there. People say they have. They've brought things from the astral realm, the unconscious realm, collective unconscious, whatever you want to call it. And they've brought.
Do they ever have a reason why it's not on video? And I don't see that.
It's the
I don't
same
see that
thing
to
with
be a
Bigfoot,
flippant thing, but it's like, just out of a numbers game, if thousands of people can manifest things in the reality, like actually manifest a real thing in reality, why not do it in front of your iPhone? Like, everyone knows that you want to get proof of it too.
Because it's bullshit, Thomas.
What if it doesn't work that way though?
It doesn't.
That's my like.
Well,
what if
that's a better
work
example? But then, how does it work? Then explain how it does work. And if it's just up to everyone's interpretation, then we're right back at it's like a mental thing.
Because I've done the same thing in the UFO field. I've had people go out and say, "Okay, go sit in this field and look at this light or whatever," and then just pray to the aliens that they'll come out. I want to
get probed tonight.
And whatever,
come
right?
Probe me.
And then I'm trying to keep an open mind. I don't want to be too big of a skeptic. We all have to be a skeptic if we're healthy minded though, right? Like, so, but I'm looking and I'm doing everything, and it's like, don't you see the star flashing now? That's an alien. I'm like, what? No, that's a
what this
the twinkling star is what
like,
it is, right? Like,
of like someone selling you bunk acid in high school, and they're like, "No, bro, you're tripping. Just don't you see the spider webs everywhere?" And you're like, "Yeah, I think maybe I do see spider webs a little bit." You know what I mean? And then but in retrospect, you're like, "Nah, dude, that like I just got ripped off. Like, there's nothing in here, and I'm just like tricking myself into thinking so."
Yeah. So I was talking about
like
that
when they serve the kids like
tarts.
Non-alcoholic beer, and they all get like drunk off of it, and you're like, "Oh, it was non-alcoholic."
Placebo, yeah.
The sweet tarts with the wet dot in the middle, where they put oil on it and told you it was acid in high school, and you ate it. And then there's like 10 people actually thinking they're tripping, and you're like, I don't feel.
I'm glad it wasn't just my school. Yeah.
Well, that gets into crowd psychology, how you're saying that everybody starts to do the same thing. Me and Thomas got a show together. It's called the Occult Book Club, where we read obscure books in history. And one of the ones that we covered was the father of crowd psychology, Gustav Le Bon, where a crowd becomes a living entity, it becomes a living organism. And the crowd is as smart as the dumbest person in that crowd. So when you have a collective consciousness, it becomes its own living, breathing thing. So if one person is tripping, everybody else, it starts to like rub, because it's this metaphysical thing that he calls a parasite, and it weaves its way through the crowd, and people start to feel a certain type of way all together, all at the same time. That's how you get, mass hysteria, or like even riots, that people start acting like just crazy.
Or having a bunch of people wearing masks that don't need to.
Exactly. It's this psychological thing again. It's all mental.
Well, this one always throws me for a loop, but I love this example. Have you ever seen the videos of like 50 different metronomes all ticking at completely different intervals, and then over time they all start to completely synchronize with each other? I think that there's a more physical manifestation of this. It's not just beyond. It's not just like a mental thing. Like there's like I don't know if you want to say vibrations or like pheromones that are going off, or just like a general energy that can very much, like, you walk into a room where like something major just happened, you can kind of like feel the energy in the room in a way, and not in like a mystical woo-woo sense, but like there's actually like nervous energy just from maybe subconscious picking up on how things are moving around. But I always relate this back to that room full of metronomes that start out of sync and then become in sync.
Well, if your left and brain hemisphere will do that, right? Like if your mind will do that with like two frequencies that are just barely apart, it'll sync those two together and make it one tone. And that's just a part of your brain. How do you imagine that a whole bunch of polarized human beings would be when you put them together and start, kind of feeding them the same thing? Eventually something's going to come into union, right? Like in some kind of way. And then if you're the guy that says, man, this is bullshit, then you're the party pooper. You're the negative guy, right? You're the one that's causing problems.
I feel like you're pointing at me because I identify with that very much. So.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the occultist yelling at us right now? Like, what are you talking about, man? Yeah. I've done it before.
Yeah. And I mean, like the system.
Send us videos. Send the videos in right now.
The system that I read from Liam Thomas Christopher's book, Kabbalah, Magic, and the Work of Self-Transformation, understanding that this stuff happens in the unconscious and in what's called the astral realm, like that stuff has really helped my life in a massive way, bro. I'm not going to lie to you. It has. And the things that I've invoked in those ceremonies have came into my life, but it doesn't mean it's not real. I just think like the connotations that we put on things too. I mean, neuroscientists don't even understand the human brain all the way yet. They're still experimenting with that. Like, how are we to say that we understand what we can't even see, right? And start talking about it as if it's true, all the time. I just don't see it,
One of the things that I usually think of when, especially we're talking about like summoning demons and like whether or not they're real and everything, like are Jungian archetypes real? Like in my mind, they're real, but it's not like I can manifest, like the wise old man archetype in front of me, but like that now is like a category that's in my brain. So when I'm reading something or I'm following a story, it's like, oh, that's that archetype. And now it's like a real thing. And I have to force my brain to believe that, the book's the 72 demons or whatever. It's really just like a description of these different archetypes so that you can help classify, behaviors that you see in other people and yourself, just as like an index or like a codex.
Yeah, we can weave this into the comic book because this is something that it kind of sort of relates. So, you're talking about the archons, Thomas, about, Goetia, Solomonic magic, all that type of stuff. And the main conspiracy that got me into podcasting really was when I listened to Nick Hinton on Tinfoil Hat, and when he was talking about the Saturnian time cube simulation. And when you start digging into the cube symbolism and you start seeing all these black cubes popping up in movies and in religions and, in
Mecca.
In Mecca is a big cube. They got two big cubes at the 9/11 memorial site. The Tesseract is a cube, Hellraiser and the Transformers and all these movies, they got cubes. And when you start digging into that, and then the idea that Kronos is the demiurge, and is control. I don't know if you've ever Googled or YouTubed these sounds from space. And Johannes Kepler was he was attributed to figuring out that planets don't orbit in an actual just circle. It's more like an oval. But he apparently he was he transcribed the sounds and the frequencies that each planet makes and tried to play it, but it sounded like really bad when he had like the composer play it. But this idea that it's science that every planet has its own frequency. If you listen to Saturn,
I think I've heard Saturn before. We got to take a break here too, but I do want to talk about y'all's comic book. But I think we should play what you're talking about when we come back and get deeper into what you're saying, man.
I think we'll summon a demon if we do that.
We might summon a demon. All right. Yeah.
We're recording. Let's get it on. Let's get it on film.
We're here with Juan Ayala from the One-on-One podcast and Thomas Gorence from Paranoid American. These guys do a lot of work together. You should go check out both the websites and the podcast. We'll be right back. The One-on-One podcast that's all on the Fringe FM on Friday nights. I think we're going to move it to a more prime time slot, but you can also check it out at the oneononepodcast.com. If you want entertainment and you want to be, if you like entertainment, just listen to Juan. I love Juan. I love you, brother. You're good at what you do. And so is Thomas. Too. Thomas is really good at the work they're doing over at Paranoid American, which they've been doing for some time now. Now they got this comic book out. Juan, I'm so jealous, man. The Chosen Juan versus the Saturnian Cube. And we were just talking about that before the break, about Saturn and all the, all of the esoteric history about it and all of the cube worship that goes on. It's a big deal in the conspiracy community. I think it's worth investigating and looking at, too. I only understand it from just a regular astrological and I would say magical and Kabbalistic point of view. But as far as like the depths of how we've, I don't know, you could say like worshipped this planet or made a god out of it, it's pretty intense. You were talking about that before I cut you off before the break, Juan.
Yeah, I talked about the sounds that are coming from Saturn, the frequencies. And if you know about the study of cymatics, where frequencies and sound affect matter, the whole conspiracy is that Saturn is the sixth planet from the sun. Saturn Day is the sixth day of the week. Right. It's got a six-sided shape on its north pole, and when you connect the dots on that, it forms a cube. And this idea that Kronos, or Saturn, is the demiurge, right, Father Time, and he is controlling and through cymatics is suppressing us in this prison planet. That's a very dark idea. A lot of people don't like the dark Gnostic idea, but I think it's pretty cool.
Man, bro, and all of my studies and everything I've done, it's what you're saying is spot on. Like, here's the sounds that you're talking about. I mean, it even sounds creepy, right?
And that's the only one that sounds that way. It sounds like people screaming. Every other one, and Venus sounds kind of weird too, but that one in particular sounds like there's people screaming, like a bunch of souls just trapped in the rings of Saturn or something. And it's a fun idea to play with. And so I said, hey, why not make the comic about fighting the demiurge and figuring out this interdimensional technology that's given to me in the comic book. And we have a lot of notable people in the comic book. We have Sam Tripoli, Alex Stein, Isaac Weishaupt, a bunch of different podcasters in the Alt Media United group. And we're going to have Joe Rupe in there as well. Once we get the ball rolling, I want to get the first one out. And once that's out and we have, issue 2, 3, 4, we can really have fun with it. Because it's just like any good show, right? You start watching a show, the first 3 episodes are kind of slow. And after that, you really start putting in the story arcs. And, as the character development comes through, you have to tell a good story. So,
oh, bro, I think it's amazing.
The first one out.
But I'm a comic book nerd, bro. Like, I love comic books, and I love the storylines. I love the artwork. I love the creativity of it. My favorite one is still hands down The Invisibles, get
right on. Hell yeah, brother.
It just is like, I don't know what it is about it. It's addicting to me, and
I don't know if it was in the first book, but like within the first 2 floppy issues of The Invisibles, you realize that the decapitated head of John the Baptist is one of their sidekicks. I was like, these are my people. This book was written for me.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the sigil magic, Joe. Do you think it's that draws people in, the sigil magic?
Yeah, definitely, because so esoterically, what you guys are talking about all the time, but we talk about on the show too, has been talked about since the beginning of time. The 7 traditional planets, what they stand for, the gods that correspond them, whether it's Babylonian, Egyptian, Greek, whatever, they all line up with these planets, right? And these planets, according to a lot of esoteric literature, govern so many things in our world, right? And when people do stories, whether it's a movie or like The Fifth Element, or do a comic book like The Invisibles or something like that, and they talk about these things, I think it speaks to our, what you were talking about earlier, our unconscious connection to our ancestry. And it, like, we just become hooked onto it, man. Like, there's like The Fifth Element. When I first saw that movie, it immediately became one of my favorite movies. And I'm like, why do I like this movie? It's got some chick in it that's, Bruce Willis is definitely a chode in this movie. Like, what? Like, why do I care so much about this movie? But I think it was because the symbolism and the story of the elemental esoteric symbolism that was going on. And there's some planetary stuff in there too, but it was mainly the story of the elements and love, you know, the pentacle story. The planet story is the hexagram story, you know. So it was mainly that got my attention. And then, you know, when I read The Invisibles, I was like, oh, I didn't even know Grant Morrison was doing a hypersigil when I read that the first time, till I saw his YouTube video about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the trippy part. Like, things started coming into his life that he put into that comic book. So you guys, you know, maybe think about that while you're making these.
Thomas and I were discussing that about putting a hyper sigil in there and manifesting something. But then I was like, if I got to be power bottom for Baphomet in the comic book, is it going to manifest itself in real life? So we kind of withheld from that because we don't want to, you know, I don't want to get how Kelly got attacked by an angel with a shovel and John D had to banish it with his little wand. I don't want that to happen to me. So we're like, let's hold off on the sigils for now. All right, let's take it easy. All right.
I mean, in a sense, like, if you guys put your heart and emotion into this thing, and I'm almost curious to see what happens once it comes out and everybody else starts putting their eyes on it and starts reading it. I think I already think some very interesting things might happen to you guys. Maybe we'll see what happens. Well, wouldn't that be an interesting experiment? Because I know how you are, Juan. You want to prove stuff. So why not in your next one put a hypersigil in there and see what happens?
I've been this last week. I've been synchronistically charged as of lately. There have been some interesting synchronicities in my life that have been manifesting, and I don't know if it's got to do with this. You know, the Kickstarter being at 200%. And people looking at it, and I've been pumping it on social media. Yeah. So I don't know if it's been that, but how you're saying it could be an interesting thought experiment, because I do believe everything is mental, and I use, like I said, I mean, I use magic. I believe in it. I think that the power of thought is magic. I think that alone is powerful in itself if you know how to place your ideas and really, you know, focus on them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think faith goes into it a little bit too. That letting go thing. You know, that definitely happens, but, you know, and Kabbalistically, it's funny that Saturn is on the pillar as corresponds with the pillar of severity at the top in the sphere of Bina, but is considered in the only place in the esoteric realm is considered the female principle of holding the world together, kind of, so to speak. But every other principle is male. It's like Father Time, Kronos, laws, judges, police. You know, boundaries, lead, every hard boundary there is, Saturn's there. And so it gets a bad rap in the esoteric field too, but also, like, it's kind of like, if you believe this, but it's kind of like, hey, if you take care of your shit, Saturn rewards you too. And the magical world, that's how they look at it, right? It's there to tell you that, hey, this is what you need to do. Take care of your stuff. Right. And then Jupiter and Saturn are kind of like playing this thing all the time against each other. Jupiter's the giver and the expander and the protector, and Saturn's the, you know, this is the law. I'm going to bring the hammer down. And in Kabbalistically, it brings the hammer down through Mars, which is severity. That's why you see the Justice card and the Tarot card where their arms are like this, because the right hand is on the pillar of severity and the left hand is the scales of balance on the pillar of mercy where Jupiter is. Right. So, it's funny, sometimes we don't understand that the Rider-Waite card, the Rider-Waite deck was designed from that Kabbalistic tree, not what you see on YouTube all the time. I mean, it does have those energies in there, but you know.
Yeah, and also matrix means womb. So I mean, if we're being imprisoned in this false matrix, it's the womb of, you know, the is it the world, the mother goddess, who knows? But it's an interesting idea, definitely, that we are not awakened. We are not born with knowing. That's the whole thing with the tree of knowledge. I've been diving into the creation story. I had this podcast that I did yesterday, and we were talking about serpent cults, serpent worship, and we were talking about the Ouroboros and all these things, and that the serpent was in, you know, certain Gnostic cosmologies, it was the eagle, Yahweh, and the serpent was Sophia. And, you know, there's also stories about that Eve slept with the serpent. That's how you get the serpent seed. You know what I mean? Like the reptilians and all this stuff. So there's different cosmologies that you can follow, but it's an interesting idea to really think about, because the whole, and the whole reason behind the tree of knowledge was so that the demiurge didn't want you to have the knowledge that you were in prison in this false reality, in this false planet.
I mean, it says that it says that in our scriptures. They're trying to be like us. The Elohim are saying us, right?
In the image of us too. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and then when you look at things Kabbalistically, right? Like there's different Elohim gods for each sphere on the pillar of on all these pillars. And then, it gets deep. It really does. But all of Western esoteric systems are based upon that tree. And I mean, even Freemasons that actually get into this stuff start realizing that after a while, if they get into it, if they're there for more than the beer and the rituals and hanging out with their buddies, you know.
But you got beer at your lodge? Wait,
that's Thomas right there. That's the definition of Thomas.
My lodge always ended with like mashed potatoes and like
cranberry juice.
Mashed potatoes and cranberry juice. Yeah. Yeah, well.
The drinkers are always the Shriners.
Yeah. Well, I didn't last very long, to be honest with you. And Freemasonry, I kind of bounced after, you know, I saw what it was really about. Like,
what was it really about, Joe?
To me, it was just a fraternity, dude. That's what it was really about, man. It was like I liked the fraternal side of it. Don't get me wrong. But when I started to talk about these deeper things, my uncle and everybody, they just look at me like, what? You know, like,
see, and that it's funny because it's like, man, I was trying to find the right analogy for this here, Dave. The one that I always go to is like when you're at school, right? There's only like a subset of people that like to be at school. Like a lot of people would just rather be anywhere but school. So already, if you've got people that want to be at school, that's kind of, let's just say it's at least half or less. It's like a minority. And then within those people, there's some that are like, I love school so much, I want to stay after school and do even more math.
Right.
Now you've got this like tiny subset within this already small subset. So I kind of see this as the Masons that actually want to talk about occult esoteric stuff. Like, not only do you have to like school and become a Mason, but then to like stay after and do extracurricular work and like read through old grimoires and discuss, you know, magical invocations and stuff.
I mean, Mackey and all those guys, that's how they were. That's all the Masonic books I read, right? Like, I got into this stuff because of those guys. And then, you know, the people I were with, they'd be like, yeah, when you'd say your rituals and you'd say, you know, what you were supposed to repeat and all that stuff. Yeah, well, you got it. That's great. You know, an exciting thing. And then I would say something like, oh, okay, so I think I get the deeper meaning of why there's, you know, two Johns, right? There's John the Baptist and then there's St. John of Revelations. Like, I get this whole, like, thing. And they'd be like, yeah, and anyways, you know, and just go on doing something else, right? And it's like,
I mean, I had slightly different experience from that, but I know what you're talking about. But it's like you got to find that like the one or two other weirdos in the lodge room, and go and gravitate towards them. Because in the lodge, I met one guy that blew my mind because I went in with like a conspiratorial mindset already. But although I was interested because I found my grandpa, long story, but in the lodge, I remember one guy was telling me how he 100% believed that all of the rituals were ceremonial magic, and the procession around the room and the way that everyone stand, that every single lodge meeting was 100% a magical ritual. And they were invoking all kinds of energies. And I just remember like, oh man, like he's a weirdo too. This is awesome. I found one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It is though. I mean, I'm like, it is, you know, it is now. And
people come in and go out too. You know what I mean? Like that guy and me, the weirdos, you know, like we might have had an active interest and actively gone to lodge for a year or two straight, and then a lot of people are just like, yeah, I got other stuff going on. I don't like, for me, it was like I got a little bit too fat for the suit that I had to wear. And I was like, I don't know if I want to go and get measured for a whole new suit and drive across town every other Tuesday. And so it was like, I'll just be speculative from home. You know, I'll be remote speculative.
I actually liked dressing up, man, because I did too.
I did too, man.
Out. I had the pinstripe undershirt, dude. I had the suspenders, the best freaking shoes you could get. I had the wings right on my shoes. I looked good. But when we went to the Albert Pike Temple, by the time the night was over, I was so uncomfortable. I get what you're saying. Like, I was so uncomfortable just from the clothes and everything. I was ready to go home after about 2 hours.
I hope this doesn't reflect poorly on me. I'm sure it does, but whatever. But man, I only was awake through maybe a third of the Scottish rite. Through like I got the certificate. It says 32nd degree, but if we only count the ones I was awake through, like, it wouldn't be so high, I don't think.
How long did it take you to get through all those?
So I mean, here in Central Florida, and I assume many other places, there was like a 3-day weekend that you could just go to do the you know, to go from basically 4 through 32.
Really?
Like 3 days.
Damn, that's cool.
But you had to be a master mason for over a year before you did that. But yeah, and I mean, the other track is that you could do it over the course of, you know, a year or 2 years and go and observe, you know, not every degree at a time, but you would get like 3 or 4 at a time. There's also one that I was showing Juan, and I think I blew his mind on this one. It was like last year, the year before, but one of the lodges in the northern jurisdiction for Scottish Rite Masonry had their annual on like a video production. Like, you would log into the website and pay like $150 or whatever, and you legitimately, by watching it over your computer online, could go from Master Mason to 32nd degree just by watching it. And that was over the course of like a 4-hour live stream.
Wow.
I want to be like Manly Hollow. I want to be given the 33rd degree.
Yeah.
Just from knowing the stuff. Like, yo, you don't even have to go to any of these classes. Here you go. Your 33rd degree. And that's it, you know. And he knew all the secrets, and it was done.
Then he stopped talking about it forever. And he never talked about it ever after that.
Well,
about it.
So you know, here's what I think people need to understand. Like, I don't know more about ceremonial magic than I do Freemasonry, right? You guys have been studying this stuff for a while now, right? You just been studying it, doing podcasts about it, things like that. People want to know, because we're studying these things. They always ask me, well, don't you have weird experiences? Don't you have paranormal experiences? Because you're talking about it, right? You're studying this stuff. Does it draw weird things to you? And I'm like, well, no, I can't explain it to them. I'm like, well, maybe in my dreams it does, because I don't think it's about drawing weird things to you. I think it's about understanding reality more, right? Like,
I would flip it. To me, it's the opposite. It's like weird things happen to me, which makes me seek out weird answers, which then leads me into like the new age and occult book section, you know, more often than it leads me into like any other section.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm trying to get at. Do weird things happen to you? You obviously say they do, but what about you, Juan? Like, do you have like weird stuff happen to you that you talk about at all? Or is it just pretty straightforward, straight edge, like skepticism kind of thing?
So, I mean, other than synchronicities, I've never had other, you know, how I've talked about on the show before, my sleep paralysis episodes. Other than that, I don't. And you got to understand that when I'm reading something, for example, like a grimoire or something esoteric or darker, and I feel my mind wandering, I let it be known that I'm not gonna give my energy towards whatever that is. You understand what I'm saying? Like, once I feel my mind wandering or my energy wandering, this is the scholarly approach. You know, that's it. This is all I want from it. I'm just trying to read the information, and that's that. So, but I haven't ever had anything really too weird happen to me. You know, I haven't been visited by any ghosts or anything.
So you're truth seeking. That's it.
Yeah, whatever the truth is to me, and not so much truth seeking, but being able to identify it when you see it. So one thing is to know that you're in a game versus when you don't know you're in a game. If you're what is ignorance is bliss. If you know it and you can see it, you can identify it. And I was kidding around before the show started, but like psychic vampires, like that's a real thing.
Yeah,
There's
it's definitely
people
real.
who literally will, and I've been on shows, dude, that I've gone in the room, and there was this one particular person that just rubs me the wrong way, and they just suck the energy from the entire stream. And and I'll message somebody in the background, be like, dude, why do they have so and so on? And they'll be like, dude, I hate that guy. I don't like that guy.
Yeah.
I think he has a weird energy. And it's like, oh, I thought I was the only one. I was like, is he a psychic vampire? And it's like every time that one dude hops on, it's something weird about it. But if you know about the psychic vampires and the people leeching off of your energies, you can maybe identify it.
Yeah, some of them aren't aware that they're doing it for sure, but they definitely are doing it, And yeah, we could talk about that till the cows come home, man. You got people that just jump into a crowd and just try to jump and step on top of everybody and name drop and get, that's all they're there to do is not have a conversation, but suck the attention and energy out of the room and everything else. I've been around it a lot, but to your vampirism thing, when I first went into the Golden Dawn, I started looking into all of these offshoots, right? And you know what I'm talking about, Thomas, like clandestine lodges, right? Let's say lodges that they're considered clandestine because they're either got weird names or they don't have like a real lineage to either England or the French lodge, and even those two go back and forth with each other. But there's lodges in Europe that are actually Masonic vampiric lodges. They have the freaking, Masonic logos. They have the whole Egyptian thing, the whole Egyptian rites all the way up to 99. That's not.
Yeah, you're talking about the Memphis Mizraim.
Yeah, but even that,
rites.
I like the Memphis Mizraim teachings, but they're still considered clandestine to this day. But which is stupid. I don't really care. But there's a really fun story behind all that, actually. There's even other lodges that are using those teachings and then like calling themselves vampires and diamonds and stuff, And so they're studying the art of energetic vampirism though. Right? Like
no, absolutely. It's a real thing. There's books on how to do it. Like there's literally books on, and again, it's like I think I read where they can actually like do it while you're reading while you're partaking, which is what I tell everybody. It's like without knowing, unaware, you participate in a lot of things that perhaps are quote unquote magical, and you're giving up your energy. You're loose to this stuff. We're talking about Robert Monroe last time I was on here, the lizard people in this other dimension. You're giving your energy off to them. And again, you're part of this ritual or this ceremony or something. I 100% believe in that. I believe that people unknowingly give up their energies.
I mean, anyone that's ever been micromanaged at a job, like I always assume that whatever the book is on how to be an energy vampire, you could just slap like and to be a micromanager on it or something and put it in there.
Yeah. I've been reading the book by Dion Fortune, the Psychic Self-Defense. That was just like one of the first psychic self-defense manuals, and she pretty much breaks it down kind of like what Monroe talks about, what you guys are talking about. But a lot of the attacks that happen to us either come from ourselves, our own mental things that are going on, or they come from other people, their heritage and their ancestors and karma that they're trying to work out, and they end up getting stuck to us somehow, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. And then there's the sexual thing. There's that play, like she even taught, and I've seen this happen too in magical orders where like the leader of a magical group or society always gets more attention than everybody or has more charisma or whatever. And then some girl ends up falling in love with the guy, and then the girl gets manic, and then she's like, oh, he put a spell on me or whatever, right? Or he hypnotized me, and stuff gets crazy. And the thing is they just can't handle the psychic influences and the energies to begin with. And people are trying to point fingers. Oh, this person attacked me and this person attacked that person. And then it's stupid, man. Like at some point it becomes like neurotic,
We could do a whole comic book on that, bro. Just psychic warfare.
You could do a whole series. Yeah. Like whole offshoots of that stuff, man.
Yeah. No, I believe in that though. I believe in energies, auras, and a psychic vampirism 100%. And I've experienced it. I've firsthand experienced it on a couple of occasions, and I wasn't the only one feeling that energy. It was through a screen. I mean, it was on a podcast, and it's like, what in the world? You know, I was psyched for this. I wanted to be here, and as soon as Homeboy rolled through, sucked the life out of everybody.
You're not going to name names, are you?
I'm not going to name.
I'm sorry. It was. If it's me, you can just tell me. I'll leave. I'll bounce.
No, Joe, we love you, Joe. You're one of the homies. No, I don't even remember his name, but he's kind of weird. So that's all I'm gonna say. Not to throw any shade.
I respect somebody that's like more honest about that, though. You know, like you don't want to be, because you have to have somebody in the room going, "Is anybody else feeling this bullshit besides me?" Because if you
wasn't
don't,
just me.
Right, right. Because if you don't, then everyone's going to get involved with it. Someone's got to speak up and say something. You don't always have to be the nice guy. So I'm with you. Like I've been a well-known asshole for speaking up in situations like that sometimes, you know?
Well, yeah. And I didn't want to be rude. You know what I mean? It wasn't my show. I didn't want to be rude. And of somebody of trust, you know, I just messaged them and I was like, hey, you know, what's up with this? He's like, dude, it's every time. And I don't know why they have him on. I was like, oh dude, this is crazy. So again, I've experienced it, and I've experienced certain things, and again, I think it's all mental at the end of the day, all this whole magical thing. And I think maybe back then, Joe, it was like a physical thing, because I feel that since we've been bombarded with, again, I want to get too conspiratorial, but like 5G and all these waves and frequencies all together at once. I think it's what Pythagoras was talking about, where you need to quiet the mind, so you can hear the music of the spheres. And I think we're not able to achieve that calmness nowadays, especially with the hustle and bustle. And that's like when I get into like a float tank and I try to meditate, my mind is going 1,000 miles an hour. And for the first hour, it's just like, hey, I wonder if I sent this email. I wonder if Thomas is on top of the artist to get the work done or whatever for the comic.
Oh, you're lying. The artists are always on point.
Well, I think I think you got a point. Like, we got to go into the top of the hour break here. But if you think about it, we are bombarded with things. Our attention spans are so small now. But back in the day, when the real mystery schools are out, like Pythagoras, so those guys, all they had was pretty much nature and maybe their woman nagging them every now and then, right? That's about it. So it's probably a lot easier to relax. But speaking of which, relax yourself just for a minute. We'll be right back with Juan Ayala and Thomas Gorence. All right, 1-800-588-0335 is the calling number. Welcome back to Lighting the Void as we head deeper into the Fringe Late Night. After the broadcast, the Jess Rogie Show, the brand new Jess Rogie Show, we have a new late night program. A very lovely lady to entice your mind will be on after this broadcast. Tonight, we've got Juan Ayala from the One-on-One podcast, as well as Thomas Gorence from the Paranoid American, paranoidamerican.com. I got my stickers, bro. I got my comic books. I put them all over my fridge. They're pretty provocative, actually,
I'll get ready for, if you think that's provocative, bro, just wait until you see some of the things that I'm working on.
Really? You got some more cool stuff coming out? Stickers?
Yeah. So I'll make this really quick, but I started talking to some distributors to get the comics into places other than just comic shops. And some of those places would be like head shops and weed dispensaries, maybe outside Florida, where like there's recreational dispensaries and stuff. And they were mentioning that the comics made specifically for the mature audiences do a lot better than the ones that are kind of all ages, anything. So if you got an 18 plus comic, so I've been working on maybe an anthology that I'm tentatively calling Illuminati, Illumin, and then the word naughty as like a funny little pun, but it's basically everything you love about Paranoid American already, but a bunch of nudity and gore.
Please tell me you're not going to get into, what were we talking about on Jess's show? Was it cryptid? It's where they have cryptids that bang each other and they talk about it. Like,
almost.
It crossed my mind, but it's too much into like the furry territory, and the furry territory is really not my thing.
Don't throw shit at the furries, bro.
Let me step that back, because honestly, the longest running comic anthology in American history is a still ongoing furry anthology. So it's that they're dominating the mature comic market. So no shade at the furries. It's just not something I'm ready to get into yet. But for example, Joe, I've got a 12-page comic on Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley doing a sex magic ritual with Pauline Pierce, Barbara Bush's grandmother, and his live-in girlfriend at the time, based on, as much factual as I can. And another one that's specifically about Edward Kelly and John Dee having what I call the occult wife swap.
Yeah,
which is
not suitable for work, Joe.
It is not suitable for work. It is very graphic, and it shows exactly what happened between the three of them that night, and maybe the angel.
Yeah, dude. Don't.
And then I've got two more real quick summaries. One's called the Sexual and Spiritual Awakening of Mary Todd Lincoln, who has the Fox sisters come to her log cabin and show her how to invoke demons, how to make spirits come. And then another one is called the American Revival, and it's about the entire world population being wiped out, and the Statue of Liberty comes to life and realizes that it's up to her to bring life back onto planet Earth. And she goes all across the country just copulating with other American monuments, everyone you can think of, from the Washington Monument to Pedro at south of the border.
Are you married, Thomas?
I've got I've got like an 11-year girlfriend, so
you got one long enough that you can get away with all this, right? Like you're fine.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I guess these would all be really big red flags.
Because I can't imagine being in a relationship and my girl will be like, "Why are you writing about all this stuff, man?" Like,
There's been times that she's walked into the room and been like, "What are you looking at?" And it's like, no, it's a reference for the artist for this thing. Don't worry.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Love to see
as
Thomas's
he gets
browsing
older
history.
Oh yeah, dude, you'll summon a homunculus in a second. But as he gets older, he gets into weirder stuff. So it's like as time goes on, it just gets weirder and weirder. But it's not as weird as that one time that I was doing an episode on crop circles, and one of the conspiracies is that it's hedgehogs mating. Right. So while I was on the podcast, I had looked up like hedgehogs mating just because I was like, I wonder what that looks like. And anyways, I finished the podcast. I was working on my desk and I left the search engine up with it on the screen, and in comes the wife, and she's like talking to me and that on it. She looks at my screen. She goes, "Why were you looking that up?" And I was like, "I promise you, I was on a podcast."
I've been there before. Where you're trying to, it was totally like, yeah, I've been there before. Where like I was trying to explain to this person what this was. It wasn't me looking at it, and they're like, yeah, whatever. Something's wrong with you, Here
I am looking at hedgehogs doing it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, what did I send you the other day, Juan? It was like the 12 strangest animal penises in the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
And it's it's one of those links that if you forgot and you left it up and you came back in, and it's like, Daddy, what's on the screen?
It's really weird. Wow. So it's not.
Do you guys, have you ever thought about doing, I know you have a lot of people on the staff, Thomas, but like, do you have people that are just story people, the people that work with the stories and that's it? Like they only help you that way? I got a guy, anymore. I'm telling you, that would help you sell way more comic books than you can imagine just doing that. Right. And I know you're pretty,
I would love to, yeah.
I know you're pretty creative, but I got a guy, his name's Night Stalker, right? And dude, he comes on the show sometimes. He frequents around a lot of these shows and he calls in all the time. This dude's got the imagination that you need, just like you. It's almost as sick as yours, I would think, just a little bit. But, I think you should do some kind of contest. Like whoever's got the best story, send it to me. We'll make a story out of it. You ever try?
I'm getting there, man. Dude, I've got so many plates spinning that like I want to do all of those things and more, and start a Patreon and a podcast and everything. I just have to be like hyper selective of the 10 things that get my attention at any given time.
Well, I mean, everybody that listens, I would think, that listens to my show, the Fringe FM, Juan's show, most of us, and I'm saying men and women alike, we're all into comic books and all this stuff, dude.
Well, if anyone does have ideas, hit me up, contact@paranoidamerican.com. I'm not like a stuffy big corporation and like you have to contact through the agent and everything. Like I read, it's like my personal email essentially. I check that one more than any other email that I've got. It might as well be my personal.
So when is
the dick pics too?
When are you planning on launching the Juan's issue? This one? Do you have a date?
Well, The Kickstarter is going for, I think, another like 14 days. We got another 2 weeks, so halfway into July, and then when that ends, that's all the people that are going to be getting the initial print run. That, you know, like there are going to be some Kickstarter exclusive covers, and there's going to be some exclusive stickers and all kinds of cool stuff. And then after that's over, and everyone that backed it gets their printed copies, then we might sit back and decide to do like another very limited run before we start working on issue 2 and 3 and 4 and all the way to 6.
I think it could be a
Magic
big
number 6,
a big thing. Like, I think you should dream big with this Paranoid American stuff, like big, if you're not already, you know.
Hey, how big you want to go, man? I'm working on 2 different video games right now too.
Really? That's cool, man. Juan, you got the coolest friends. You guys are cool.
Tom, well, that's the thing. I'm very fortunate to not be doing this by myself and with somebody with so much experience in the field that everything is relatively easy, you know, because I'm working with one of the best in the field. So yeah, it's easy for me. So again, I'm very fortunate, and here I am, and hopefully I am shooting for the stars. And I tell Thomas all the time, I go, dude, what if it does?
Yeah, exactly. Why not?
Blow up.
Why not shoot for the stars?
So we are. I mean, we are. And then, like I said, we have some pretty big names that hopefully draw some more attention, and so people can see them in a cool environment, you know. So essentially, we want to do six issues, and every single issue is going to be a different conspiracy with a different podcaster that kind of sort of has that niche in the conspiracy realm. So, you know, the Tartaria crowd, the Hollow Earth crowd, you know, they're people who are known.
You got to put me in the astral travel crowd, dude. You got to.
Exactly, bro. You got different people. You got Merkel with the whole cryptid and stuff like that, and paranormal and all this stuff. So
can
it's going to be different
like,
people.
I want to be ripped, man. Like, you know how you got Mark looking in that pod, that
be
one.
Be careful what you ask for, bro.
I don't want to be like
every
slender.
Every time someone comes up with like a suggestion for what they want their power to be, it's like I'll play like the monkey paw almost. It's like, okay, you want that? Like, you'll get it, but it's gonna have a twist to it.
Yeah, I mean, think about this.
Yeah, what cost?
The listener, if you're listening, and I know you are listening because I can see you, think about what you would want to look like as a comic book character. What would you want to look like, right? Me, I want to be ridiculously ripped. Like, ridiculous.
Are you wearing spandex?
Yeah, dude. Where people are like, good God, he's got to be on like some kind of steroids we've never heard of. I'm talking about so ripped, I can't even reach around, almost, you know, that kind of ripped. That's how big I want to be in a comic book, like He-Man, but bigger. You know, we can make that happen. Age, are you? Are you my age?
But it's like you know, occultism, right? How much are you willing to give up for that? So the same thing happens in Paranoid American comic universe.
That's right.
You can have all that, but at what cost, bro? You know what I mean? You ran away the filter, so what's gonna happen? And it's like a box of chocolates. You might not like what happens by you wanting to attain and achieve that goal. So, you know,
like a really dumb version of that, but like, you're so ripped, but it's almost like Midas touch. Like, you go to give your homeboy a high five and you break it, you snap his hand in half. And
listen,
like,
bro,
you go to give, you know, grandma a hug and you just crush grandma, and grandma's dead now.
I want to tell you a story about that, actually. When I first got into jiu-jitsu in Arkansas and combat jiu-jitsu, we had a guy in there. His name was D.D. Nichols. You can look this dude up. Big red-headed dude. He was a black belt, but he was also in the strongman contest. There's pictures of this dude like dragging airplanes and stuff. You know, obviously they're in neutral, but he's making a move and pulling them and things like that.
I drug an airplane last weekend, dude.
I know you did, but this is my point. Like, this dude, he's ripped. He's massive. And I rolled with this guy once, and he just reached out. He was so ripped, he just reached out, and all I did was just like pushed my chest into him to try to bear hug him. And he broke his finger just by touching me because he's so strong, dude. His finger just broke, you know?
Joe was like, you know,
yeah, and I was like, dude, he's like, and then he looked at me and his finger was kind of laying over, and he's like, oh, I broke another one. And I'm like, another one? Like, what are you talking about?
You mentioned before that like you love WWE, and when I was graduating high school, one of my best friend's older brother, he was what you're describing, like this completely jacked dude and he was like taking steroids, and he started getting like the scars that come up, like he had gone way over the limit and was like getting crazy with it. And we were driving back from somewhere. We were driving back from like Boca Raton back to Fort Myers or something. and we're in traffic, and he must have been going through, like, I didn't know, I was a babe to the world still, but he must have been going through some kind of roid rage, and like someone cuts him off, and he starts like pulling on the steering wheel, and he rips the steering wheel off, and we're like driving in traffic, and he said something similar. He was like, "Oh God, not again." He knew what to do to like regain control of the car and get it over so we could get AAA to tow it away and everything. But yeah, I mean, it's like that, like didn't know his own strength, and what a terrifying time to.
Would he lose his temper?
Happen.
He just lost his temper and pulled it.
It was weird just because like he knew that he was like a roid head and that you would expect him to go into a roid rage, but he was like a practical joker. So he would sometimes like act like he was going into a roid rage, even though he wasn't actually going into the rage, but he had the muscles and like he was doing the same things. You know what I mean? So even though it wasn't like a real rage out, it had all the same side effects of a real rage out.
Yeah, Didi used to do that in jiu-jitsu class because guys like Juan size, right? They were built for it. So if they actually got to him and he hadn't thrown him across the room, they would lock onto him like a squirrel, right? And he would just start flipping out. Just start hitting him, punching him, flipping out, jumping up and down, trying to bounce him off walls and stuff. This was not your ordinary Brazilian jiu-jitsu class. This was one of these people that put a few systems together and made a system out of it and called it jiu-jitsu, right? So it was kind of redneckish a little bit, you know, a little backwoods like jiu-jitsu.
Like the poor man's James Bond version.
Yeah, it was a cross between judo, Japanese jiu-jitsu, and hapkido. Right. So we were always doing something stupid, hurting each other in there. But, yeah, I think to be able to express this stuff through comic books is a big deal, though, right? Because there's a ton of there's a ton of podcasts. There's a ton of books. There's a ton of literature on this stuff, right? And so many people are interested in this. You got to think about this, too, right? Like, are you really purveying the truth through this stuff, too? And I think, to your extent, it's like, yeah, I'm telling you the truth, but I'm telling you some really messed up truths too that you don't even know about, which honestly, I'm into dark humor. I think it's funny. I think it's hilarious, you know, but I don't know about the cryptid erotica stuff, man. I'm a little, you know.
I'm not there yet, man. I'm still working my way towards it. I'm not there yet.
I think Juan's like 5 more years. If he 5 more years down the road, he's going to be into some weird stuff, you know.
Well, I find it really odd that for some reason, you know, Paranoid American was going on all these years. And then as soon as he met me was when he started to venture into these other avenues. So I'm like, why did you? So, cause I have to sit there and he'll send me previews and I'm like, dude, that looks good or that doesn't look good. So it's like, I'm seeing his ideas develop as they're happening. He's like, hey, dude, I'm working on this. I'm like, how are you going to make that happen, dude? And I mean, he pulls it off, and that's why it's Paranoid American and not Marvel.
I've had some of the most awkward conversations this year with artists of my entire life. One of them was a message that I woke up to, and they were like, "Hey, I just finished reading the script. You were right. It is pretty graphic. By the way, isn't the Washington Monument like 6 times her size?" That led into like a really fun, long conversation about, you know, art direction.
Well, the reason why I wanted to have you guys on the show is I was talking to my other friend, Owen Hunt, you know, Bootsy Greenwood, Owen Hunt. I was talking to him and he was telling me, he's like, oh man, you know, he goes, you know, Juan, Ayala and Thomas Gorence. I said, yeah, I know them. He goes, they're killing it, man. They're doing these comic books and they raised all this money for a comic book. And I'm thinking, what the hell? Like, I just got through talking to these dudes. Like, what's going on, you know? So I figured I wanted to have you guys back on and talk about it, man, because that's how you know when people are making stuff happen. They're making things happen so fast you don't even know what's going on. You know, that's some good energy you guys got going on.
Got to strike while the iron's hot, Joe. That's something I've learned. And you got to, when you have that momentum going, it's all about momentum, right? So if you have it going, just make sure you don't do anything else to disrupt it, because you might disrupt it and throw the feng shui off. Mm-hmm. And I think we start, you know, our ideas are coming together so well that people, like the artist, enjoys the script. So when they enjoy the script, they're more eager to get it done. You know, when they're seeing the people in it or whatever, they're more eager to get the product done, versus if you have an artist. This is what's so great about being with Paranoid American, because he's got connections for everything. So it's like, hey, this guy's good for this. This other guy's not good for this. This guy might not like the script or whatever, but he's been aligning everything to where the artist loves the script. So he's like super eager to just get content out and just finish the pages, one after another and working at a crazy pace. So we let him do his thing, just keep going because he's already in the
Right, man. I get it.
going. Don't disrupt the man. So, and it's been working out great. So I think it's going to be really fun. And yeah, we are shooting for the stars. I've told Thomas I want to become, the conspiracy podcast comic book, like, the Alt Media United universe or whatever. And I want other podcasters.
I think, speaking of which, I think that there's people in the chat that would agree already. You guys are already that. You're already considered that as far as the comic book genre is concerned, right? So we got your back too. We're going to help you make it grow. We'll be right back. Last segment of Lighting the Void coming up. Also stay tuned for the Jeff Rogie Show. We're here with Juan Ayala and Thomas Gorence from Paranoid American. Stay with us. Juan Ayala and Thomas Gorence, our guests tonight. Stay tuned to the Fringe Late Night here for the Jeff Rogie Show. We were talking during the break about all the esoteric symbols in video games and comic books and stuff now. Something else that I've noticed that I feel like, and I'm sure maybe you guys have seen this, I don't know, but I feel like the satanic panic thing is coming back. I've seen this on YouTube from some of the people that are big speakers for like Christians, and now they're worried that they're like, the pagan world is coming back to take over, and they're trying to break down the Christians again. And I'm thinking, dude, how come every time we go to like seek truth, this is what happens? One religion panics that the other one's going to take over or something like that. It's the same thing in politics. It seems like, oh, the Democrats took over, they're going to take our damn guns, and and you're like, what? The Republicans they'll be back. They always come back. Like, what are you worried about? But when you look into the truth of all this, you can see the truth of both religions. And I don't understand to this day why we are still so damn polarized about this stuff. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I had a theologian on this past week, and we were talking about the new axial age that he believes is going to come, where people are going to start to be awakened individually again. And when they switch from the flat model of religion where it was inner, with yourself and finding enlightenment and all this stuff, and they went to the hierarchical pyramid scheme of things with the church, with the establishment of the church, I think that's when people started to see the facade and the corruption and the hierarchy. Like the guy at the top talks to God every day, the guy under him every other day, the guy under them, twice a month. So people start to recognize the corruption and the hierarchy, and then they're starting to wake up. Really, I don't think it's paganism that's coming back, but I think it's just people realizing that we are gods and we do manifest our own reality and all this stuff.
What do you think, Thomas?
I've got a more practical, maybe boring approach at this, but just like almost any topic we come up with here, but it's like I've got a comic that I'm working on about this, but I swear it's actually starting production in like 2 or 3 weeks, and it's my next paranoid pamphlet on the satanic panic. And I found this thread. Like I've been trying to knock at this topic for so long, because in my mind there's always been this gap, right? It's like sometime around the 40s or 50s, maybe into the 60s, you got like the MK Ultra and the Mansons, and maybe like the Crowley and infecting like the Beatles music, and then that kind of invokes this like Black Sabbath imagery. There's kind of like this meandering but very vague thread of like quote unquote Satanism that became into popular culture. But I really do think that I found one of the main threads here, and without giving the whole entire story away, it all links back to the Knights Templar. Essentially, Knights Templar get blasphemed by worshiping Baphomet, apparently, and that was they were all become instant persona non grata. They could all be immediately executed because it was like, oh, they're worshiping Baphomet, so of course they all get to die. No one really cares. Fast forward back into like the 1880s, and you've got Leo Taxil. And if you're familiar with Leo Taxil's The Mysteries of Freemasonry, which he released, which was a hoax book, but it basically stated the same thing about Freemasons, that Freemasons were worshiping Baphomet, and that they were all Satan worshipers. And he gave them a specific name called the Paladists, which was kind of like a made-up word for that time. And this hoax got so far that the Vatican weighed in, and the Vatican even this sort of initiated this anti-Masonic movement in America. It kind of reinvoked this schism between the Roman Catholic Church and Freemasonry, because they're kind of competing for, you know, sort of authority in many ways. But this right here was this nugget in 1880, Leo Taxel claiming that Freemasons and Palladists were Satanists. Then all of a sudden it reinvoked this concept of like, oh my God, there might be Satanists hiding behind every corner in the late 1880s, early 1900s. And this kind of persisted all the way through popular culture to one Anton LaVey, who sees a television program that was featuring, I think, Don Rickles as a Satanist, and it was in like the Wild Wild West, I think,
Don
was the name of the show. Listen to me, bro. This is crazy. I'm telling you, and I think I'm breaking ground here, seriously. But you'll have to wait for the pamphlet. But Don Rickles plays a legitimate Satanist, and he refers to himself as like Mephistopheles or something, but he's essentially a Satanist. He wears a little robe. He has the little pointy beard that Anton LaVey is known for. Anton LaVey at this point is a little bit of an edgelord, and he's watching this on TV, and he's like, oh, I love this dude's style. Yeah, I'm a Satanist too. And at the time, Anton LaVey was working as like a lounge singer or something, like a musician in like a bar. And he decides the night after he sees this, next time I give a performance, I'm going to shave my head, and I'm gonna declare this bar I'm working in as the Temple of Satan, or the Church of Satan. And that was the actual. This was the actual origin of Anton LaVey's Church of Satan. And it was all, and like the persona and the idea and everything came from him watching the Wild Wild West and seeing Don Rickles be a Satanist, and rewinding this back even a little bit further, and I'll stop.
It sounds true almost the way you're saying.
Well, and the guy that wrote the episode and produced that particular episode of the Wild Wild West had also worked with Aldous Huxley's personal assistant, and Aldous Huxley's personal assistant helped write a movie called The Seventh Victim. I think in 1942 it came out. And in his research for writing The Seventh Victim, he was set up with a group of quote unquote devil worshippers that were living in Greenwich Village in a nice upper class apartment building, like rich New York socialites that were self-identified devil worshippers. And he went there and interviewed them for like this part in like what eventually became in the movie. So if you look at the movie The Seventh Victim, you get an idea of what devil worshippers were like in high class society in 1940s Manhattan. And anyways, this is this thread, though. It goes from Leo Taxel to this Seventh Victim movie, to the guy that writes the Wild Wild West, to Anton LaVey seeing the Wild Wild West and saying, oh, I like that, forming the Church of Satan. And then all of the pop culture sort of emergence from there. I mean, there's a lot more links here that I'm not going to like monopolize and go into every detail. But I found this thread, bro. It
sounds like the Quentin Tarantino of conspiracy comic books, this guy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, look at his background. That's what it is. It's the putting all the threads together. But yeah, absolutely.
So Night Stalker's dropping like pictures of Don Rickles in magician's gear and like robe. And what is this on the Wild Wild West?
That's right. It's from the Wild Wild West, man. Yeah, I don't know if I got the
Night
exact,
of Druid's Blood is the episode. He said
that's it. That's it.
It goes deep, bro.
The guy that wrote it was Bodine, and Bodine also happened to be involved with a lot of the classic horror movies and horror TV shows of the time. So out of all the people in the world that might have been interested in finding what like actual Satanists were doing in this time period, it was Bodine. I think Bodine was the one that tasked the assistant to Aldous Huxley, and not to mention like, how does Aldous Huxley pop up in this? Coincidentally. So it was just like a fun exploration on finding all of this stuff.
You got to finish that comic. You can't tease people like you can't tease us like this. You have to actually do that comic book.
It's going into art production in 3 weeks, but it's probably going to take a couple months to finish. And to a hat on that is that Anton LaVey was 19 years old at the time. So again, he's like, just flipping on TV at prime time, sees Wild Wild West. He's like, oh, what a badass Don Rickles is with this cult. I'm going to do that. And then bam, now you've got the Church of Satan done.
All right. So on the Chosen One versus the Saturnian Cube that's coming out, like who did the story thread for that? Did Juan do it, or did both you guys come up with it, or did everybody pitch in on it?
Well, me and Thomas went just back and forth, and it was something that it's a really fun process because no idea is off the table. So he'll be like, "Oh, I got a really stupid idea," but it might be stupid, and he'll present it and go, "Dude, that's amazing, but let's switch it up like this." So it was essentially just him and I just going back and forth and sprinkle. We throw shade at certain conspiracies as well, just to have fun with it. So it's gonna have its paranoid American twist where it's all about never taking yourself too seriously and having fun with it. So it was mostly just us going back and forth and coming up with it. And he'd ask me a question, but why is it like that? And I'd be like, well, that is a good question. And we just start to develop like this background of why it was the way it was or whatever. And it was essentially just on the spot. And I think it's hilarious, dude. We have it to the third or fourth issue done. And when you read it, I'm laughing out loud when I'm reading the script. It's hilarious.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, honestly, I've got a philosophy I've learned is that when I'm working on an idea, like I wanna hear something so extreme that I have to tell you, Joe, like, yo, bro, like turn that down from an 11 down to a 10, and let's see what, or like let's see what, if that's an 11, let's see what like a 5 looks like. I would rather constantly be telling people to tone it down than someone pitches an idea and it's like that's like a 2, bro. Crank that thing up to like a 20 and come back to me. Like, I always want to hear something that like offends me, or I'm like, bro, that's way too much detail. Like I want to like trim down from like a grandiose sort of idea.
Yeah, well, I think what you're doing is amazing, and I find this highly synchronistic because I have people that listen to the show that I talk to about this that I feel like are just as talented writers, artists, alike, and I'm like, you guys should do this, and then all of a sudden, I'm not playing. The more I was thinking about this stuff, bam, Juan shows up, and then you show up, and it's like, oh. And I feel like consciousness is kind of connected because someone's already doing it, which doesn't mean that other people shouldn't do it. It just means like it's valid, It's a valid idea to like take what's inside of you, all these crazy conspiracies and stuff, and express them through artwork, Like it's really cool, man. And I think you guys are already on like Amazon Comics, all the different comic book things that they have out there. Right, like all of the.
I mean, everyone that doesn't matter yet. The big ones that matter is like Diamond Distribution and Penguin Distribution, and that's how you get into actual comic shops. But
how do we get?
We're talking money and logistics that are just outside the current scope right now. We're talking printing like 10,000 issues and then shipping them to hundreds of different stores across the country and paying for warehouses to stock the ones that don't sell. And yes, it's it's possible, but it's like, do I want to devote the next 3 months of my time and budget to that, or do I want to just keep making a bunch of crazy comics, which is why I've got a backlog of like 10 that are done and just like waiting to get out there. But it's like, do I spend that money and just like printing a bunch of stuff and get marketing done and like all the boring stuff, or do I like make another comic and get my fix?
I hear what Juan's thinking in the back of his mind right now. He's like, go bigger, take it over.
Yeah, again, nothing is out of the realm of possibilities. So it's definitely, we want to get the first one out, and the second one really is going to kick it off. And after that, again, the momentum. We get a
keep
good
the
one,
Kickstarters going too. You know what I mean?
Issue 2 is Tartantia.
If you want to, if you want to get
issue 3, sorry.
big, maybe. I'm just thinking like maybe. I'm just throwing this out there. If you get big enough and get enough of everybody behind you, you could do a Kickstarter to fund a company that could pay and hire people to do this stuff. That some of these Kickstarters have like millions of dollars behind them, dude. It's for stuff that I don't even give a damn about, to be honest with you. Right? Like, but it could happen. It could totally happen.
It just takes that one, Joe, that one to really set it off, and it's like a chain reaction. But there's definitely some interesting comics on there that really get pushed a lot of the times. That Thomas Osemi one, I'm like, yeah, dude, I don't I don't know why that's got so many followers or backers or whatever it is. But hey, I mean, we're just doing our thing. We're the same people on the podcast as we are off the podcast, so we try to just bring something different to the table and just fresh ideas. And I just wanted to do something, not that there's not other podcasters doing the same thing we're doing, putting out content,
I'm sure
but
there are.
I want to encourage other podcasters within my network, All Media United, to want to come up with their own comic. And we have one right now that stepped up and is getting concept art done and all that stuff. And we're going to make it to where the universes can be together. So eventually they'll have a cameo in my comic and vice versa. So I think that's really cool to make it like a community project through Paranoid American Comics. And we'll see where that goes. Maybe we'll become the Marvel of conspiracy comics and podcasts and stuff. Never say never, you know what I mean? So,
and we're dreaming big, man. This is the first year that I've actually had as many people working on as many projects at one time as ever. So, and it takes taking big steps to see if you get some big results from it. So you're not gonna just sit there and wonder. And when I was talking to an artist I was working with the other day, and they were like, "Man, how do you get all these things out?" And I was just telling them, like, the trick is that you just finish.
You finish the project, right?
You finish it and you put it out, and just by finishing it, even if it's like garbage, you're already in like the top 10% of people that actually finish a thing. And then if it's even halfway good, now you're in like the top 5%. You know what I mean? And just like every little bit of effort that you give it, and that's kind of always been my secret of like, give half of a whatever. Just give. Yeah,
that's what it is in podcasting too, right?
Just care about it a little bit more than everyone else. You don't even have to make it your entire life. Just actually care about it, and you're already in such a small minority that now if you finish it, like, you're going to find someone out there
all the time in podcasting. And some of the new hosts that are thinking about coming on the station and stuff like that too, they said, "Man, I heard you say there's 100 to 150,000 new podcasts that come out every month." And I said, there are. But 70% of those people fade out after the first 10 episodes, right? Another percentage fades out after the first 20 to 50. So if you can get to episode 100 or 200, you're already up there in the marks with some of the podcasters, right? Then if you actually start to focus on your craft and make it like compelling, and just keep doing it, regardless if it's shit or not, you're going to get better. It's an inevitable, like it's a probability inevitability kind of thing, based on the market, right? So
there's a old movie it's a horrible movie called Foolish with Eddie Griffith and Master P or something, but there's this one quote in there that I always go back to, and they're asking like Eddie Griffith, like, why are you a stand-up comedian? And he's like, could you imagine me having any other job? You know what I mean? Like any other job. If he's working the drive-thru or something, he would just immediately start like dressing people down and like cutting at them. So it's like he has to be a stand-up comedian because he wouldn't survive in any other realm of life. And I'm not saying like I have to do this or I would die, but like I would, even if no one was buying the comics, and even if everyone said like this is stupid, stop doing it, I feel like I would just keep on doing it regardless.
I got an idea I want to talk to you guys about. I've already talked to you guys about before, but I think I'll talk to you about it after the show, but I think storytelling is where it's at in any realm, whether you're listening to it or looking at it, right?
Well, if you're talking about the read through, man, like the Chosen One is the perfect thing for that read through, because now we have the actual people that can do the voices.
Yeah. So I think that's the next thing, dude, because I don't want to keep talking. It's too big of an idea in my mind, because it's like, everybody's either doing this or that, right? This or that. But if you can stimulate both, right, at the same time, I think it would be amazing, actually. Storytelling's where it's at. I could listen to stories all day long and don't have to look at anything. I could also look at stories and read them all day long, especially images, without listening to anything. But to have both, I mean, it's like a brain orgasm almost for me.
I think that's what draws people into conspiracies, right? Because it's a story. This links to this links to that links to Aldous Huxley. What? So you start looking like through the lineage of things, and it's a big long story. And I think that's what really draws people in, that storytelling aspect. And if you look at a lot of the popular podcasts are what? Storytelling, people's experiences and whatnot. So I think that's very important, because it speaks to our primal nature of our ancestors when they were telling stories, over a campfire, back then in the middle of nowhere with no technology. So it's the art of memory and rhetoric. That's what religion is.
Yeah, bingo, man. I was gonna say like that classic training of rhetoric, like that is storytelling.
That is for sure. And you guys, we got to roll out of here, but go fund this thing. It's already 100% funded, but I'm asking you guys,
200%.
I'm asking you guys to throw more money at these guys because I love what they're doing. I believe in what they're doing. Go fund the podcast. I mean, the comic book. Fund Juan's podcast too, for hell. Like go listen to it. I did. That's why I wanted him to be on the station, right? So you guys, go check it out, the oneononepodcast.com, also the paranoidamerican.com. I put the links there for you to check out the Kickstarter for Juan's comic book and order some comic books. And thank you guys for coming on the broadcast. It was really fun talking to you again.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, stay tuned for the Just Rogie Show here live on the Fringe FM. Good night, y'all. Sweet dreams.